Always excited to be able to come to talk to phenomenal women. I'm especially excited that it's a Women's Wellness Day. Unfortunately, I don't think that we take enough days like this to focus on our mental and physical and emotional well-being, and so I love the ability to just devote a day to that, even if it's just that day, to be able to do it every year. 10 years strong. I know that this event has been going, so I'm thrilled for you guys to be here, and I'm especially happy for me to be here with you. And I want to spend my time, it's a little bit abbreviated because I know you guys are running behind schedule, so I'm going to talk fast and get it all in. I want to share with you probably the most significant moment of my professional career that simultaneously had the biggest impact on me personally. And it's a conversation that in many ways, I'm looking for my clicker. Oh, here we go. In many ways, it's a conversation that changed so much for me. And I didn't know it was going to happen. I didn't anticipate the fallout or consequence or benefits of it happening. And one of the biggest and sort of best things beyond the personal benefits to me that I'm going to share is that I've had the ability to share so much of it with people throughout the country. And I'm hoping that after our time together, some of you will be able to walk away with some of the same nuggets, ideas, inspiration to kind of go make really great things happen for yourself, like I think that I was able to do from this conversation. So the conversation happened. I worked for 10 years at ABC News, and now it's almost 4 years ago, my boss came to me. Let's see if I can make this clicker work. Yes. So my boss came to me, and she said, "You don't look your best, I'm going to send you to a stylist." And so you can see those pictures and you could maybe judge for yourself. She was right, I didn't look my best. And she sat and explained to me about this wonderful stylist and how great she was and how she was going to be able to help me. And in my mind, I only heard one thing. I didn't hear anything about this stylist. I didn't hear anything about sort of this nice way that she was talking to me. What I heard, what I took away was lose weight or lose your job. And the words, "you're fat, lose weight," never came up. There was never any question about my job being in jeopardy, and yet I'm sort of a smart cookie, and I thought to myself, like, she's not just caring about what I wear, she's caring about the fact that I don't look my best, and I definitely don't look like any of my colleagues on television. And so it was right around Christmas time that this conversation happened, and I was about to go off on vacation with my family, and I think there's nothing worse than for any family than sort of a vacation, a family vacation, a holiday vacation with like mom on a diet. And so I thought to myself, like, I'm not going to talk to my kids about this. I don't want my kids to even know about this. My husband was the only person that knew about this conversation. And I said to him, you know, I don't have a plan, but I'm going to figure this out. I don't know what I'm going to do. I don't know how I'm going to handle this, but I'm going to do something once and for all because I never, ever, ever want to have that kind of conversation again. And so very slowly, I started to sort of just change. And I didn't realize I was changing. I didn't know what I was changing. It sort of was just progressing, just happening. And every Thursday, I would have my regular segment on Good Morning America. And about 9 months into that segment, that time frame, I was doing a live segment, and Sam Champion at the time was doing weather on GMA. I love Sam. He doesn't work for GMA anymore, but I love Sam. And live on air, Sam said, "Do I see a slimmer Tory Johnson?" And I was like, "Oh my God, can we please have a commercial break? Like, this is not what I want to talk about. Like, I can't believe he's bringing this up." And I tried to deflect and go back to my products that I was talking about. And he's like, no, let's like talk about you, like do a spin around. And I was like, there's no getting around this. He's not going to get off this topic. And so I managed quickly. We did get to a commercial break, and I didn't really have to address it. But I had hundreds of Facebook posts, tweets, emails from people saying, like, "Sam's right, like, what are you doing? What's going on?" Some people asked, "Are you sick? Are you okay? But what's your secret? Tell us." And then I got a phone call from a publisher, and they said, like, "We want you to write a book about what's going on in your life. We see this transformation. We're watching all of these comments online. Like, you're onto something here." And I said, like, "I've written 5 career books. I'm definitely not writing another book. Books take so much out of you." And they're like, "No, this is different. This is a personal book." And I said, no, like I'm not writing any more books. And they were like, we're really going to make it worth your while to write the book. So I was like, great, let's write the book. So then I was like, oh my gosh, what did I do? Like now I need to actually be able to answer this question, like what is my book going to be about? And what did I do? And if I had to share what I was doing with other people for it to make sense, what would that be? And so what I discovered was that rather than going on a diet, I had made what I came to call and came to realize was a shift. And I want to share with you what came to be my 5 core steps of shifting, because it really is these 5 things that worked for me, not because I knew what I was doing in this particular area, but I drew on sort of all of my areas of expertise, of running a successful business, of building successful relationships, of sort of problem solving on a regular basis. And I figured out, like, if I could make good things happen in other areas of my life, certainly I could figure this one out by drawing some of the parallels. And so that's ultimately what I did. And these 5 core steps can really apply to, I want to say, any health challenge that someone's facing, but even beyond that, building a stronger relationship, fixing a problematic career, doing something where you feel stuck. And so the very first step is really asking yourself, how fed up am I? And so I had this conversation with my boss, and I could have been the kind of person who sort of walked away saying, like, you know what, I dare them to fire me. I dare her to, fire me. Or, you know what, fine, I'll go to the stylist. I'll change my clothes and have some tiramisu after the stylist. I could have made up excuses like that. But as I thought about that conversation, I realized to myself, I'm so fed up. But I had to get specific. What does fed up look like? What does fed up mean? And so as I started getting really honest just with myself, and this is really not about sharing it with anyone else, but it's really about yourself, I admitted to myself that I hadn't been to a doctor in more than 10 years because my last doctor's appointment ended with her recommending that I go see an obesity specialist. And I thought, not only am I not going to that specialist, I'm not coming back to you either. And I loved my doctor. And there was nothing wrong with what she did or what she said, but it was how I interpreted it. So I'm like, I'm not going back there. That's okay. I had my kids, like, I don't need this. I thought back to my wedding day, and on my wedding day I was so terrified to wear white, so I wore navy. I thought, like, if I wear white I'm going to look like a giant marshmallow, like not like a cute one like you put in hot chocolate, like, like an embarrassing scene, and I just didn't want to do that. And I started remembering kind of all these things, insignificant like the color of what I wore on my wedding to significant like not going to the doctor. And I realized that I was putting so much good energy toward bad. I was constantly coming up with excuses. An invitation would come in the mail for something and I would panic if it was black tie, thinking, oh my gosh, everyone's going to be wearing strapless things and I'm not even going to wear a dress, so what excuse am I going to give because I'm not going? And I would constantly put what I call good energy toward these bad problems rather than just tackling the problem itself. And so being able to make a change, because change is hard and we resist making change. So when we want to make a change, establishing first and foremost, why am I so fed up that the pain of changing is actually going to be easier than the pain of staying the same? That's when you know, okay, I'm ready to make a shift, I'm ready to make a change because I really and truly am fed up. What are you willing to give up? So the obvious when looking to lose weight is like, oh, food, right? And yet food was pretty much the least important thing in many ways of my answer to this question, what are you willing to give up? When I thought about sort of how I got myself in this situation, how I had been sort of in this lifelong pattern of obesity, I realized that there was a pattern of excuses that sort of were part of my whole life. And as I looked at my adult life, at some of those excuses, I travel a lot. And so I would always say to myself, like, oh, traveling's so grueling, like, go easy on yourself. And, there's not really, like, healthy options on room service menus or airports. And by the way, whatever, what happens on the road stays on the road. And I'm like, no, if I'm really being honest with myself, like, what happens on the road stays on my ass. And, sorry. And I was like, why am I kidding myself that traveling and eating healthy, like, can't go hand in hand? Like, It's because I was looking for a crutch, looking for excuses. And so I had to get rid of those excuses. I also had to get rid of the diet mentality, which is, for me, a temporary pause on bad behavior. That's what a diet is. We temporarily say, okay, for 2 weeks, 2 months, I'm gonna sort of do this thing, but I can't wait to kind of get back to normal. And for me, my normal had to change. And so what I realized was this pattern of dieting that I had been on over and over and over for years, which was I could be really good for a week, 2 weeks, 2 months, whatever it was, but the typical pattern was like if you eat really healthy for 6 days, on the 7th day you get to eat whatever you want. You get to have a cheat day because you can't deny yourself and you should be able to indulge and, you know, portion control and sort of all that kind of stuff. And so for me, I could be good for the 6 days, like I could at least handle that. But on the 7th day when I would indulge, I would suddenly then find myself the following day saying, oh, you know what, this week's gonna be a really hard week and it's not all that convenient to go back on that diet. And in fact, you know what, this whole month is actually really, really stressful. And so, you know, it's not gonna feel really good to do this. And so, I would even be saying to myself, and you know what, the holidays are coming, and so this isn't good. It could be like July, and I'm like, the holidays are coming. And like any excuse I would come up with to just abandon a plan of healthy eating. And so I realized that the thing that I had to answer to this question about what I was going to give up were the excuses, because the excuses were my crutch. And I had to recognize them, own them, and be willing that when I saw them creeping up again, that I had the ability to nip them in the bud. And so typically when we don't like something, when we're stuck in a situation that we want to change, we have to be willing to give certain things up. We have to be willing to make accommodations in order to get where we want to go. And that was critical in step number 2. Step number 3, really simply, what's your plan? So for me, my plan, and this is true whether you are talking about business, relationships, health, like you have to have a plan of how you're going to accomplish what it is that you want. My plan was really simple, and I learned this from business, where I help women start and grow businesses as part of my own business. And I realized that when people would come into me with these like really lengthy business plans, and they'd say like, I need an hour to explain to you what my business was, and I'm sort of like, after the first 5 minutes, you've lost me, I've forgotten 40 pages into your business plan, I don't even know what you're doing. And so I've always been in the business area of my life very focused on clear consistency. What's clear, concise, how can I just sort of say it in a sentence, what is it really fast so that no matter where I am, who I'm talking to, I can't forget it. And so that was true here. And my plan was 3 prongs. Eat less, which is sort of like duh, right? If you want to lose weight, generally you have to eat less, at least that was true for me. Choose better, which was a key component, and for me that meant really cutting carbs. I knew that was the thing that had always worked for me in the past. It's very easy to know whether a food is high carb, low carb. Nobody sort of needs any kind of education or deep education around that. Our area of stumbling, at least my area of stumbling, is always like, how do you stick to that? It's not so much that you don't know what to eat, it's just how do you stick to that. So it was very clear for me, I had to choose better. And the 3rd prong was move more. And at the beginning, this was probably the easiest of all, because I was moving not at all. So a walk around the block was something like, victory, like, yay, you moved today, how fabulous. I now have a treadmill desk, and so I stand and or walk at my desk all day. If you had told me at the beginning, like I was going to get a treadmill desk, I'd be like, no way, wrong girl. But now I get it. I get that sitting all day is not good for me. I get that I need to be moving, you know, regularly, and it's hardly difficult. It's definitely not taxing in any way, and it was just really starting with those baby steps. So making a plan is critical. It's critical for any difficult change, and being able to, on a moment's notice, share that plan, even if it's just to yourself, so that you can't get lost, so you can't get derailed, I think is essential. And for me, it has been essential to this day, knowing that I can be true to that plan, knowing that that plan is with me no matter where I go, whether I'm traveling someplace, whether I'm at a function, whether I'm at home, no matter what it is, that plan can always be with me, and I can always be true to that particular plan. Step 4, what's your daily accountability? So I knew that I was going to be in this for the long haul. I knew that there was no end date in sight, that this was about a lifelong change. And so I knew that change takes time. And typically we fail at making change because we abandon too quickly, because we're impatient, because we want results really fast. And with difficult changes, it doesn't come fast enough for us. And so having measures of daily accountability was and still is pretty critical for me, because it allowed me to feel a sense of momentum. And that momentum then fuels success. And it kind of keeps you going. When you feel like you're on the right track and you're having a really good day, you want to have another good day and then another good day. And it's when we sort of lose that we tend to lose momentum. And so that daily accountability is really critical. And I think it's different, obviously, depending on the specific journey that you're on and what you want to change and where you want to change. For me, some of the basics of daily accountability, journaling, for me is powerful. Wearing a fitness tracker. I now track just with my phone instead of on my wrist, because I felt like I was cheating a little bit with the wrist. It was giving me too much credit, whereas my phone, I actually have to really be moving for my phone to give me the credit for those steps. The scale. You know, a lot of people have very strong opinions about not wanting to live or die by the scale. For me, the scale became my best friend, because by stepping on the scale every day, I knew where I was. And I learned this probably most clearly in business, that I wanted to know every day where sales were within my company, so that I couldn't get to the end of the week, the end of a month of kind of ignoring things, and then be shocked at the end of the quarter when things like weren't where they were supposed to be, and there wasn't enough time to sort of save that quarter because I had ignored the reality for too long. And so for me, the scale is really much about just knowing where I am, so that I don't get, you know, to 2 weeks and be like, oh my God, where did that 10 pounds come from? Like, how did that even happen? It's sort of like, it doesn't happen when I'm kind of on top of it and just aware every day. And again, it's not live or dying by that number or that scale. It's just about knowing your numbers. And I think in all areas of health and wellness, knowing our numbers is so critical. It became this thing where I'd be in conversations or overhear people talking about their blood pressure, their cholesterol, and I'm like, I have no idea what those numbers are, because I haven't been to a doctor, because I haven't cared about any of those things. And so I suddenly gained an appreciation of the value of our numbers and knowing our numbers and being aware of our numbers, so that we can take control of what we need to do with those numbers. And the same is true for women and money. So often we ignore the numbers, or we leave those numbers up to somebody else. And so there were a lot of parallels for me. I also had a little trick in that daily accountability, because there were and still are so many moments where it's so easy to sort of blow a good day, blow a good week, blow a good month. And so when I found myself in those moments, I would pause for a second and just ask myself, preference or priority? Preference or priority? And so typically my preference, hands down, is like, you know, have the potato chips, like eat the cake, like dive into, you know, whatever snacks, pasta, pizza, like you name it, like go for it, carbo load, yes, like for sure that would be the preference. Priority, stay the course, like don't mess up, like priority is definitely long-term health. And so if you succumb to this immediate preference right here, to just this quick fix, you're going to feel badly. You're not going to be happy. It's derailing this sense of priority. And it's not about denying myself. It's about discovering that so much of my eating was mindless, that I would mindlessly, instead of just have a handful of chips, eat the whole bag of chips. And I realized that even though every sort of nutritionist and diet expert preaches this idea of moderation, I kind of came to realize, like, I wasn't born with the moderation gene. If I could just have like one bite and not the whole cake, like I wouldn't have been in that situation. Or if I could have, you know, a couple of chips instead of the bag, like I wouldn't have had that problem. And so when I realized that like moderation just didn't work for me, I needed to make a change. I sort of equated myself in that way to sort of, you know, the concept of like you should be able to treat yourself, like you should be able to have that piece of cake, you should be able to treat yourself with these good things. For me, it became very similar to like an alcoholic. When somebody wants to stop drinking, they can't celebrate a month of sobriety with a beer. Like it doesn't work, right? It's just like, it's like flawed thinking. It doesn't work. You can't celebrate, you know, a month of no cigarettes by having cigarettes. Like it doesn't work. And so my addiction in that way, my drug of choice in that way, were like really bad foods. And yet we have to eat. And so it's you know, it falls on us to sort of make the right eating choices. And so when I realized, like, okay, the moderation game like doesn't work for me, so I'm going to go with this preference or priority thing, I often made the right choice. Not always, but most of the time I made the right choice. And I had 2 little gimmicks that have helped me. And these are the only gimmicks in my entire shift. One is pickles, so an edible gimmick. Pickles, like if I was like, oh my god, I just have to have something, I'm so starving and nothing good is available, pickles. I had pickles at the ready all the time, and so I would eat pickles. And then sometimes too many pickles, but pickles are pretty safe. And the other was nail polish. So I keep top coat, even to this day, right next to my bed. And when I'm tempted at 10 o'clock at night, when everybody's sleeping and I'm like desperate for a snack, and I know there are no like great snacks, what I really want is like chocolate chip cookies that my kids have left in the house, or something that I shouldn't have at 10 o'clock, I put top coat on my nails. Because I care more about preserving a nice manicure than messing up those nails. And I won't go into a bag of chips, I won't go anywhere, quite frankly. I just want my nails to dry. And in the time that it takes them to dry, that sort of insanity has passed. I've kind of talked myself off the ledge, and I'm kind of feeling like I'm so happy I didn't go have that. I'm not even hungry. I didn't even want anything. Let's go to sleep. And so it works. It works. So those pickles and top coat were really my only 2 gimmicks, and they stay with me. I still use those things. So daily accountability. Some kind of accountability is critical in making this kind of change. How will you develop patience and celebrate success? And so patience, I think, is the hardest part of all. It's super hard when you are looking for a job and you're doing everything right and nobody's returning your calls and nothing's going your way, and you think like you're never going to get hired, you're never going to get this other job. But when you keep at it and you keep at it and you keep at it, ultimately good things come to you. And so the same is certainly true here. It takes an incredible amount of patience and perseverance to ultimately get to a place where you can feel some sense of victory. And for me, I didn't know when that day was going to come. I still don't know, quite frankly, when that day was going to come. But I heard something that helped me a lot. This woman, Gretchen Rubin, who wrote this book called The Happiness Project. Gretchen's a good friend of mine, and she said to me, she said, we always tend to overestimate what we can do in a short period of time. And as she was describing this, I'm like, that's me. I'm the girl who says like, oh, I need to lose 10 pounds by the wedding. And by the way, the wedding is next Saturday. And I would think like I could just make miracles happen. I could just sort of, will myself to make like big changes overnight, which it's impossible to do. But we trick ourselves into thinking that we can do it. We don't give ourselves the luxury of time. But Gretchen says also the opposite is true, which is that we underestimate what we can do over the long haul because we don't give ourselves that luxury of time. And when you do give yourself that luxury of time, really incredible things can happen. And so for me, over the course of a year, and it was just, a year was the moment when I was like, okay, let's like kind of measure this success. In the first year, I lost 62 pounds. Or as my son Jake says, he's like, Mom, you lost like 2 of our dogs. I'm like, I'll take it in dogs, I'll take it in pounds, I'll take it in whatever you want. And if you would have said to me at the beginning of that journey, that time that I was heading off on this family vacation, you're gonna give up every single food you absolutely love, and you are gonna move more, and you're gonna sort of do all this stuff, and you're really only going to lose about 1 pound a week, I would have said like wrong world, wrong plan, like what are you smoking, like that's not me. I probably would have said it as, what you're smoking something that could help me lose weight, because I always wanted a quick fix, a gimmick. I was always after a gimmick. And so I would have said like, no way. And yet, when we think in advance, a year feels like an eternity. A year from now, it feels so long. We can't even like wait for 18 days to be over in this presidential election. We're like, 18 days can't pass, right? And so, a year, my gosh, a year. And yet, when you look back in retrospect, a year goes by so incredibly quickly, and unbelievable things can be accomplished in a year if you only give yourself the beauty of that time, and too often we don't. And as I looked back over that year, and I thought about sort of all the ways that I was rewarded through this patience and perseverance, a lot of good things came to mind. Dr. Oz had me on his show. I'm like, I feel like I shouldn't have been so excited about that. I'm on GMA that has a bigger audience, it's like a better show, it's everything. But like, Dr. Oz had me on his show to talk about my book, and he was like, cheering me for the pickles, cheering me for sort of everything that I thought, and I was like, oh my gosh, like I can't believe that I'm actually talking about something. This has always been like my private demon, my hidden shame, something that I would never ever talk about. But then I wrote a book about it, then I talked to Dr. Oz about it, then I traveled the country to be talking to people about it, and those things sort of fuel that celebration of success and fuel that desire to be patient and to recognize that I'm in it for the long haul. Then all kinds of what I now consider sort of sweet, inedible treats. So it could be fresh flowers, a manicure, a little at-home facial, t-shirts that say really fun things. One of my proudest moments came kind of halfway through the first year when I was doing a segment coincidentally with Emerald on GMA, and I wore a white dress. So that was my moment. I didn't wear one 23 years ago when I was married, and in fact, my kids had never ever even seen me wear a dress. I didn't own a dress. And so not only did I start wearing dresses, but I bought a white dress, and I finally had my white dress moment, and I'm like, I waited 23 years for that. And so I started recognizing, and more importantly, appreciating all of these little teeny moments that sort of seem insignificant and maybe even a little laughable and kind of silly, and yet all those little teeny moments led to a big victory, led to a sense of like, I'm on a great path, I'm doing the right thing. I think the biggest and best victory came for me was when I went to my doctor. At that 1 year mark, it was the first phone call that I made after the new year to book an appointment at my doctor's office. And when she told me that I was doing everything right and that I was totally on track and that I better never ever abandon her like I did, like that was to me sort of the greatest thing, like not fitting into a certain size or not being discouraged anymore in dressing rooms, but just hearing her say like, you're healthy, you're good, like keep doing what you're doing, like you're totally in the right place, was to me, I was upset that I had denied myself that for so long. And when I talk to other women, either privately or in bigger groups, to be able to say like, don't deny yourself. Like the past does not have to indicate the future. It doesn't. If there's something that you don't like about the past or the present, you have the power and the ability to change that. And we have so much power within ourselves that we often don't give ourselves credit for. And one thing I end every night with, I have this pillow made for myself. Every single night I ask myself, what went right today? Because I had been in this pattern all the time, and I think it's what contributed to overeating and emotional eating, is constantly focusing on things that are going wrong, and the worry, and the dread, and the problems. And at the end of the night, I would always find myself sort of laying in bed, focused on all the things I didn't finish today, all the things that await me tomorrow, all the fires that I have to put out, kind of all the to-dos, and all the people that are relying on me. And I changed that thinking around, and instead I end each night by just saying to myself, like, what went right today? And sometimes, you know what, I'm like grasping to come up with something, like, oh, I sent an email and it didn't come back undeliverable, like, great, that went right today. So not every day is like so fabulous, but sometimes like really, really, really good things go right. And I made a lot of smart choices and had a lot of good conversations and connected with a lot of really good people, or even just had that one conversation. But whatever it is, I end the day focusing on the positive. And that positive brings more positive the next day, and so on and so on. And instead of building on the long to-do list and all the problems, I'm building on the positives, the successes, and that's what builds that momentum. And for me, that is what making a shift has been all about. A shift in so many different areas of my life toward the right place, the right stuff. And if there's anything that I can ever do to help any of you sort of figure out when you're ready to make any kind of shift, ready to make any kind of change, even if it has felt so daunting and something that you could never ever hope to accomplish. This was for me that thing that I thought would just elude me forever, and I would go in kind of pockets of like, you know, so what? Like, that's who I am. Like, I'm the big girl. I'm always going to be that big girl. Like, that's okay. That's who I am. And it's okay if I don't look like anyone else on TV, and if I don't go to those black tie events, and if I never wear a dress, and if I don't go to the doctor, and the list would go from, you know, insignificant things to significant things, and I would justify it. And it was the most freeing moment to say, it doesn't have to be that way. You can change. And that's what I want you to know, that anything that bothers you, it doesn't have to be that way. It can change. And if I can help you in any way to make that change, it would be my honor. So I appreciate you guys giving me this time to talk to you today. I hope that you enjoy everything that this day has to offer for you. we don't have time right to do a formal Q&A, but I'll be hanging out here for the next, I don't know, 15 or 20 minutes till your next session starts, and then I'll get out of your hair. So if you want to talk individually, I'm happy to talk to any of you individually, but thank you.